I never thought owning a modest three-bedroom house in Riverside, California, would turn into the legal nightmare that defined the worst 18 months of my life. But here I am, sitting in a courtroom watching a 52-year-old woman named Patricia Hendricks try to explain to a judge why she believes my firewood belongs to the entire neighborhood. My name is Quinton Vance, and I moved to the Sunset Meadows subdivision in April of 2023. The house was perfect for my needs: a single-story ranch with a decent-sized backyard and a two-car garage that I immediately knew would be useful for storing my woodworking supplies. I work as a freelance furniture maker, and I had been stockpiling quality hardwood for years, accumulating black walnut, cherry, maple, and oak from various suppliers and estate sales. The collection represented thousands of dollars and countless hours of careful selection. The first few months were peaceful. I kept to myself mostly, working in my garage workshop and occasionally waving to neighbors as they walked their dogs or retrieved their mail. The HOA seemed like a minor inconvenience at most. I paid my quarterly dues on time, kept my lawn trimmed to the required 3-inch maximum height, and made sure my trash cans were hidden from street view, except on collection days. Everything changed on a Saturday morning in late September when Patricia knocked on my door. She was wearing a lavender cardigan despite the 85-degree heat, and her hair was styled in what I can only describe as a speak-to-the-manager haircut. Short in the back and longer in the front with blonde highlights that seemed to catch the sunlight aggressively. Her smile was tight and practiced. "Good morning, Quinton. I'm Patricia Hendricks, president of the Sunset Meadows HOA board. I wanted to welcome you properly to the neighborhood." I wiped sawdust from my hands onto my work jeans. "Thanks. I have been here since April, though." "Oh, I know. I've been meaning to stop by, but board duties keep me so busy." She craned her neck, trying to see past me into the garage where I had been working. "I couldn't help but notice you have quite a lot of lumber stored in there. Very impressive collection." "Thanks. It's for my furniture business." Her eyes lit up in a way that made my stomach tighten with an inexplicable sense of dread. "How wonderful. You know, I've been thinking about building some raised garden beds, and several other neighbors have mentioned wanting to do small projects. It's so convenient that we have a resident woodworker with such abundant supplies." I shifted my weight, blocking her view more deliberately. "I use that wood for client projects. It's expensive stuff, not really suitable for garden beds." "Oh, I'm sure you have some scraps or extra pieces." She pulled out her phone and started typing something. "I'll send out a neighborhood email letting everyone know about your resource. It will be such a wonderful community benefit." "Wait, no. I can't just give away my materials. That's my livelihood." Patricia's smile never wavered, but her tone acquired an edge. "Quinton, one of the core values of Sunset Meadows is community cooperation. We believe in neighbors helping neighbors. Surely you can spare a few pieces of wood here and there. These aren't 2x4s from Home Depot. Some of these boards cost over $50 per linear foot. I source them specifically for commission pieces." "Well," she drew the word out, her lips pursing, "I would hate for there to be any issues with your compliance status. Your garage door has been open quite frequently, and there are regulations about running businesses from residential properties." The threat hung in the air between us like humidity before a thunderstorm. "I do woodworking in my garage. Lots of people have hobbies." "Hobbies, yes. Businesses are different. I'm sure we can work something out that benefits everyone." She handed me a business card with her contact information and the HOA logo. "Think about it. I'll be in touch." She walked away before I could respond, her heels clicking against my driveway with metronomic precision. I closed the garage door and stood there for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. The interaction felt wrong, like I had just been shaken down by someone who spoke in pleasantries while wielding a bureaucratic knife. 2 days later, I received an official email from the HOA board. The subject line read, Community Resource Sharing Initiative. My name was prominently featured in the second paragraph as someone who had generously agreed to provide woodworking materials and expertise to fellow residents. I had agreed to no such thing. I responded immediately, clarifying that there had been a misunderstanding and that I could not provide free materials or labor. I kept the tone professional and explained again that my wood inventory was business stock, equivalent to asking a dentist to provide free fillings to the neighborhood. Patricia's response came within an hour. Your lack of community spirit is noted. The board will be reviewing your property for compliance issues at our next meeting. The next week, I received my first violation notice. Apparently, a small paint chip on my mailbox post constituted a failure to maintain exterior aesthetics. The fine was $75 unless I fixed it within 10 days. I took care of it that afternoon, touching up the spot with matching paint. 3 days after that, another notice arrived. My garden hose was visible from the street, which violated Section 14.7 of the HOA bylaws regarding storage of utility items. Another $75 fine. Then came a notice about my garage door being open during excessive hours, a complaint about my doormat being non-regulation colors, and a citation because apparently my porch light was too bright and needed to be replaced with a lower wattage bulb. I was being harassed, systematically and deliberately. I decided to attend the next HOA board meeting, held on a Thursday evening at the community center. About 20 residents were scattered among the folding chairs, most of them elderly couples who seemed to be there out of habit rather than interest. Patricia sat at a table in front with 4 other board members, all women between the ages of 45 and 60. When the floor opened for homeowner comments, I stood up. I want to address the recent violation notices I've received. I've gotten 5 citations in 2 weeks for extremely minor issues, some of which I'm not even sure are actual violations. This started right after I declined to give away expensive business materials for free. Patricia's expression remained neutral, but her knuckles whitened as she gripped her pen. Mr. Vance, the HOA board takes its responsibility to maintain community standards very seriously. If your property has multiple violations, that's a reflection of your choices, not bias on our part. My doormat is the wrong color. That's a real standard you're enforcing. Section 19.3 clearly states that entry mats must be earth tones or neutral colors. Your mat is blue. It's navy blue. That's basically black. The board has determined it to be in violation. She made a note on her paper. If you have no other productive comments, I need to move on to other business. This is productive. You're fining me because I wouldn't give you free wood. A few residents shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Patricia's smile returned, razor sharp. That's a serious accusation, Mr. Vance. I hope you have proof of such claims. Making defamatory statements against board members can result in additional fines and even legal action. I sat down, realizing I was only making things worse. After the meeting, an older man with white hair approached me in the parking lot. Don't waste your energy fighting Patricia, he said quietly. She's been board president for 6 years. Anyone who crosses her gets the same treatment. Most people just give in or move away. That's insane, he shrugged. That's HOAs. Over the next month, the harassment escalated. I received violation notices twice a week. Patricia started showing up at my house unannounced, always with her phone out, taking pictures of my property from the sidewalk. Once, she brought 2 other board members with her, and they stood in front of my house for 20 minutes, pointing and taking notes like investigators at a crime scene. The worst part was that I kept getting emails from neighbors asking about wood. Patricia had continued telling people I was a community resource. I had residents knocking on my door asking if I could build them bookshelves or repair their deck furniture, always with the expectation that it would be free or heavily discounted because we're all neighbors here. I started keeping my garage door closed all the time, which meant working in stifling heat since the ventilation was poor. My productivity dropped. I missed a deadline on a client order for the first time in my career. In mid-November, I attended another board meeting. This time, I brought printed copies of every violation notice I had received, along with photos showing that many of the cited issues were either fixed or had never existed in the first place. "I've received 18 violation notices in 8 weeks, I said during the comment period. "This is clearly targeted harassment. I've fixed every legitimate issue, but the notices keep coming." Meanwhile, I can walk around the neighborhood right now and find a dozen properties with visible garden hoses, decorative flags that aren't on the approved list, and lawn heights that exceed 3 inches. None of those homeowners are being cited. Patricia barely looked up from her papers. "If you're aware of violations on other properties, you're welcome to submit complaints through the proper channels. As for your citations, they've all been legitimate and documented. My house number on my mailbox is allegedly the wrong font. How is that legitimate?" Section 8.2 requires Helvetica or Times New Roman fonts for address numbers. Yours appears to be Arial. I stared at her, wondering if I had somehow fallen into an alternate dimension where font choice on a mailbox was a matter of legal importance. "You measured the font on my mailbox." "The board is thorough in its assessments." I left that meeting knowing that nothing I said would matter. Patricia had the full backing of the board, and they had the power to fine me indefinitely. I had already paid over $800 in fines, and more kept coming. That weekend, I made a decision. If they wanted to harass me over my wood storage, I would simply remove the wood from the equation. I started researching off-site storage options and found a climate-controlled facility in Morno Valley, about 20 minutes away. It was going to cost me $150 a month for a large unit, but it would be worth it to end this nightmare. I rented a moving truck and spent an entire Saturday transporting my lumber collection to the storage facility. It took 4 trips. By evening, my garage was empty except for my basic tools and workbench. No more valuable wood for Patricia to obsess over. I felt victorious, like I had outsmarted a petty tyrant. That feeling lasted exactly 4 days. On Wednesday afternoon, a process server came to my door and handed me a legal summons. The Sunset Meadows HOA was suing me for removal of community-designated resources and breach of neighborhood cooperation agreement. They were seeking $15,000 in damages, plus legal fees. I read the document 3 times, certain I was misunderstanding something fundamental about reality. They were suing me for moving my own property off my own premises. The complaint alleged that I had verbally agreed to make my woodworking materials available to the community, and that by removing them, I had caused material harm to neighborhood projects and resident expectations. I immediately called a lawyer. Her name was Sandra Mitchell, and she specialized in property law and HOA disputes. Her office was in downtown Riverside, in a building that smelled like old books and air conditioning. She read through the summons while I sat across from her desk, my leg bouncing with nervous energy. "This is absurd," she finally said. "But that doesn't mean it's not dangerous. How can they sue me for moving my own stuff? They can sue you for anything. The question is whether they can win. And unfortunately, HOA law in California is complicated. Judges often defer to HOA boards on matters of covenant enforcement and community standards. If they can convince a judge that you entered into some kind of verbal agreement, or if their bylaws contain language about community cooperation that's sufficiently vague, you could be in trouble." I never agreed to anything. I explicitly told Patricia no multiple times. Sandra made notes on a legal pad. "We'll need to document everything. Every email, every conversation, every violation notice. We need to build a case that this is harassment and retaliation, not legitimate enforcement of community rules. How much is this going to cost me?" She gave me a sympathetic look. "My retainer is $5,000. If this goes to trial, you're looking at $20,000 to $30,000 in legal fees, possibly more." I felt sick. I was being sued for moving firewood, and it was going to cost me thousands of dollars to defend myself against a completely fabricated claim. Over the next few weeks, Sandra subpoenaed HOA records, including all board meeting minutes, email correspondence, and enforcement actions taken against other residents. What she found was illuminating. In the past 3 years, Patricia had initiated legal action against 7 different homeowners. 4 had settled, 2 had moved away before trial, and 1 had represented himself and lost. "She does this," Sandra explained during one of our meetings. "She finds something she wants, manufactures a dispute, then uses the HOA's legal fund to bully people into submission. The HOA's insurance covers their legal costs, so she has no financial incentive to back down. That should be illegal. It probably is, but proving abuse of process is difficult. We're going to argue that her actions constitute harassment and that the lawsuit is frivolous, but we need to be prepared for a fight." The preliminary hearing was scheduled for February. In the meantime, the violation notices continued. I received citations for parking my truck in my driveway at an incorrect angle, for having a package left on my porch for more than 24 hours, and for trimming my bushes in a manner inconsistent with neighborhood aesthetics. I started documenting everything. I took photos of other properties showing similar or worse violations that went uncited. I saved every email. I even bought a doorbell camera to record Patricia's visits, which were becoming more frequent. She would stand on the sidewalk in front of my house, sometimes for 30 minutes at a time, just staring at my property like she was trying to will a violation into existence. One evening in late December, my neighbor to the east, a guy named Marcus Chen, knocked on my door holding a beer and looking uncomfortable. "Hey, man, I wanted to give you a heads up. Patricia came by yesterday asking questions about you." "What kind of questions?" "Whether you have people coming and going at odd hours, whether your garage makes too much noise, whether you've ever done anything that made me uncomfortable." She was fishing hard. "What did you tell her?" "That you're a quiet neighbor who keeps to himself and that I've never had a single problem with you, but she's definitely building some kind of case." "She already sued me." Marcus's eyes widened. "Seriously? For what?" I gave him the short version. He shook his head in disbelief. "That's completely insane. Listen, if you need me to testify or write a statement or anything, I'm happy to help. Patricia tried to fine me last year because she said my Christmas lights were up too early. She's on a power trip. I might take you up on that. Thanks." As Christmas approached, I tried to focus on work and ignore the mounting stress. I completed several client projects and even landed a commission for a custom dining table that would pay well. But the lawsuit hung over everything like a storm cloud. The preliminary hearing in February was brief. Both sides presented their basic arguments. Sandra argued that the lawsuit was frivolous and asked for a summary judgment in my favor. The HOA's lawyer, a slick guy in an expensive suit named Derek Paulson, argued that I had breached a community cooperation agreement and that the case had merit. Judge Raymond Torres, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, listened to both sides and denied the motion for summary judgment. "This case involves questions of fact that need to be resolved at trial," he said. "We'll proceed to discovery and set a trial date." I walked out of the courthouse feeling like I had been punched in the stomach. This was really happening. I was going to trial over firewood. Discovery was a grueling process. Derek Paulson sent interrogatories with dozens of questions about my business, my income, my wood inventory, and my interactions with neighbors. They demanded access to my financial records, my client list, and even my social media accounts. Sandra fought back, arguing that most of it was irrelevant, but we still had to turn over substantial documentation. We also sent our own discovery requests. Sandra subpoenaed all of Patricia's emails as HOA president, all board meeting recordings, and all enforcement actions taken over the past 5 years. What came back was damning. Patricia had sent dozens of emails to other board members about me. In one, she wrote, "Vance thinks he can hoard resources while the rest of us go without. We need to teach him what community means." In another, sent 2 days before I moved my wood, she wrote, "If he removes the materials, we have grounds for legal action under creative interpretation of Section 22. Section 22 of the HOA bylaws dealt with removal of permanent structures without board approval. It was meant to prevent people from tearing down sheds or fences. Patricia was trying to argue that my lumber collection constituted a permanent structure. "This is good for us," Sandra said when she showed me the emails. "It establishes her mindset and shows that she was planning to sue you regardless of your actions. It supports our harassment claim." But there was more. As Sandra dug through the HOA's financial records, she discovered something interesting. Patricia had been reimbursing herself for various expenses using the HOA's funds, including several purchases from high-end furniture stores. One receipt showed a $2,000 dining table purchased from a store in Newport Beach, submitted as an office furniture expense for community center. "Does the community center even have a dining table?" Sandra asked. I had been to the community center several times. It had folding tables and plastic chairs. No. Then where did this table go? We filed a motion requesting additional financial documentation. The HOA's lawyer fought it, but the judge ordered them to comply. What came back showed a pattern of questionable expenses going back 3 years. Patricia had submitted reimbursements for furniture, decorations, garden supplies, and even building materials, all supposedly for community use, totaling over $18,000. Sandra brought in a forensic accountant who reviewed the records. His conclusion was clear. Patricia had been embezzling from the HOA. "We need to notify the other board members," Sandra said, "and possibly law enforcement." "Will that help my case?" "It shows that her actions toward you are part of a larger pattern of abuse of power. It establishes her credibility issues. But more importantly, it's the right thing to do. She's stealing from your neighbors." We sent a formal notice to the other board members, copying all homeowners in the subdivision. The email included summaries of the suspicious expenses and copies of receipts that clearly showed personal purchases being billed to the HOA. The response was immediate and chaotic. Within 24 hours, 3 of the 4 other board members resigned. Patricia sent a neighborhood-wide email calling the accusations defamatory lies and threatening to sue anyone who spread false information. Several homeowners started demanding audits and investigations. An emergency HOA meeting was called. Over 100 residents showed up, filling the community center to capacity. I sat in the back with Sandra, watching as Patricia tried to maintain control of a rapidly disintegrating situation. "These accusations are baseless," she said, her voice shrill. "This is a coordinated attack by a disgruntled homeowner who refuses to follow community rules." A woman in the front row stood up. "Patricia, I'm looking at a receipt where you bought $600 worth of garden equipment from Armstrong Garden Centers and submitted it for reimbursement." "Where is that equipment?" "In my garage, available for community use." "We have a community garden shed. Why is community equipment in your personal garage?" Patricia's face flushed red. "I'm storing it temporarily." Another resident stood. "What about the dining table from Restoration Hardware?" "Where is that? We needed quality furniture to represent the neighborhood properly." "There's no dining table at the community center. Did you take it home?" The meeting devolved into shouting. Patricia tried to adjourn, but residents refused to leave. Someone called for a vote of no confidence. Patricia claimed that wasn't proper procedure. Someone else called the police to report potential embezzlement. 2 Riverside Police Department officers arrived about 30 minutes later. They took statements from several residents and collected copies of the financial records. Patricia was not arrested that night, but the officers made it clear they would be opening an investigation. The following week, the HOA's insurance company sent a letter informing Patricia that they were denying coverage for the lawsuit against me. Their investigation had concluded that the lawsuit was without merit and potentially undertaken for personal, rather than community benefit. Without insurance coverage, the HOA would have to pay legal fees out of its operating budget, which the remaining board members were unwilling to do. Derek Paulson filed a motion to withdraw from the case. At a hearing, he told Judge Torres that his client could no longer afford representation and that he had ethical concerns about continuing. "Mrs. Hendricks, do you intend to continue this lawsuit?" the judge asked. Patricia stood alone at the plaintiff's table, looking smaller than I had ever seen her. "Yes, Your Honor, I'll represent myself," the judge sighed. "This case is set for trial in 6 weeks. I strongly encourage both parties to consider settlement." But Patricia wasn't interested in settling. She wanted her day in court, convinced that she would somehow be vindicated. The trial began on a Monday morning in late May. The courtroom was small, with wood paneling and fluorescent lights that buzzed faintly. Patricia sat at the plaintiff's table with a stack of papers and a defiant expression. Sandra and I sat at the defense table, prepared to dismantle her claims piece by piece. Patricia went first, presenting her case. She had created a PowerPoint presentation that she projected onto a screen, filled with photos of my garage and text blocks explaining why my lumber was a community resource. Her argument was that by storing valuable materials on the property, I had created an expectation of availability, and that the HOA bylaws language about community cooperation created a binding obligation. Mr. Vance possessed materials that could have benefited the entire neighborhood, she told the judge. By refusing to share and then removing them, he violated the spirit and letter of our community covenants. Judge Torres interrupted her several times to ask for clarification. "Mrs. Hendricks, can you point me to the specific bylaw provision that requires homeowners to share personal property?" Section 22 discusses community resources and permanent installations. Section 22 is about structures like sheds and fences. How does that apply to lumber stored in a garage? The lumber had been there for months. It was a permanent installation. Lumber is movable property. It's not a structure. Patricia argued in circles, insisting that the intent of the bylaws supported her interpretation even if the exact language did not. She called no witnesses and presented no evidence of any agreement I had supposedly made. When it was our turn, Sandra methodically destroyed Patricia's case. She introduced my emails explicitly declining to provide materials. She showed the court records of the harassment campaign, including all 18 violation notices I had received. She presented testimony from Marcus Chen and 2 other neighbors who confirmed that Patricia had told them I was a community resource, despite my repeated objections. Then came the financial records. Sandra walked the judge through each questionable expense, showing how Patricia had spent thousands of dollars of HOA money on personal items. This lawsuit isn't about community cooperation, Sandra argued. It's retaliation by an HOA president who was accustomed to getting whatever she wanted and couldn't accept being told no. When Mr. Vance refused to give her free wood, she manufactured a dispute and used the HOA's resources to punish him. Judge Torres asked Patricia about the financial discrepancies. Those were legitimate community expenses, she insisted. Where is the dining table purchased from Restoration Hardware for $2,000 in storage? Where? That's not relevant to this case, Mrs. Hendricks. I'm asking you a direct question. Where is the table? Patricia's jaw tightened. In my home, temporarily. For 3 years. She didn't answer. The trial lasted 2 days. On the second afternoon, Judge Torres issued his ruling from the bench. This is one of the most frivolous lawsuits I've encountered in my 20 years on the bench, he began. Mr. Vance had no obligation, legal or otherwise, to provide his personal property for community use. The HOA bylaws do not support the plaintiff's interpretation in any way. Furthermore, the evidence clearly shows that this lawsuit was filed in retaliation for Mr. Vance's refusal to acquiesce to demands that were unreasonable from the outset. He ruled in my favor on all counts and ordered Patricia to pay my legal fees, which had reached $28,000. Additionally, Judge Torres continued, I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for potential criminal prosecution. The evidence of financial impropriety is substantial and concerning. Patricia stood frozen, her face pale, but the story didn't end there. 2 months later, the Riverside County District Attorney filed charges against Patricia for embezzlement and misappropriation of funds. The investigation revealed that she had stolen over $23,000 from the HOA over a 4-year period, using her position to approve her own fraudulent reimbursements. In October, Patricia pleaded guilty to felony embezzlement as part of a plea deal. She was sentenced to 18 months in county jail, 3 years of probation, and ordered to pay full restitution to the HOA plus penalties. The Sunset Meadows HOA underwent a complete restructuring. A new board was elected, and they immediately voted to rescind all the violation notices that had been issued to me. They also passed new bylaws limiting the board's enforcement powers and requiring financial audits every year. I moved my wood back into my garage. No one said a word about it. Marcus organized a neighborhood barbecue that summer, and I actually went. It was strange being around people who had mostly ignored the situation while it was happening, but several residents approached me to apologize. We should have said something earlier, one older woman told me. We all knew Patricia was out of control, but we were scared of becoming her next target. I understood that fear more than most people ever would. I also received payment from Patricia's restitution fund for my legal fees, though it came in installments over many months. The HOA's insurance company settled with me separately for the violation fines I had paid, giving me a check for $850 along with a formal apology letter. Life slowly returned to normal. I completed several major projects that year and built up my client base. I even took on an apprentice, a young woman named Maya who wanted to learn furniture making. We worked in my garage with the door open, and nobody complained. Sometimes I would see Patricia's house as I drove through the neighborhood. New owners moved in about a year after her conviction, a young family with 3 kids who painted the trim and planted new flowers. The house looked happier somehow, like it had been released from something oppressive. I learned a lot from the experience, though I wish I could have learned it some other way. I learned that petty tyranny thrives when good people stay silent. I learned that institutional power, even something as mundane as an HOA board, can be weaponized by those who crave control. I learned that standing up to bullies is expensive and exhausting but necessary. I also learned to read HOA bylaws very carefully before buying a house. When I eventually sell and move, that will be my first priority. The legal battle consumed 18 months of my life and cost me thousands of dollars, countless hours of sleep, and immeasurable stress. But in the end, justice actually prevailed. Patricia went to jail. I won my case. The HOA reformed. Those victories felt good, but they didn't erase the fundamental absurdity of the situation. I had been sued over firewood. I had gone to trial to defend my right to store my own property in my own garage. A woman had committed multiple crimes and torn apart a neighborhood because I wouldn't give her free wood. Even now, years later, when I tell people this story, they often don't believe it at first. It sounds too ridiculous to be true, too petty and bizarre. But anyone who has dealt with an HOA run by power-hungry individuals knows exactly how true it is. On quiet evenings, I sometimes sit in my garage workshop, running my hands over a piece of walnut or cherry, feeling the grain and weight of it. This wood, this simple material, became the focal point of a legal war. It revealed the worst in one person and forced me to find strength I didn't know I had. I built a bookshelf last month for a client in Newport Beach. It was made from the black walnut I had stored at that facility in Morno Valley during the darkest part of the dispute. As I sanded and finished each board, I thought about the journey those pieces had taken. From the tree to the mill to my garage to a storage unit and back again, finally transformed into something beautiful and useful. That's what I do. I take raw materials and create something better. Patricia tried to take those materials and twist them into a weapon, into leverage for her ego and greed. She failed. The bookshelf turned out perfect. The client loved it. I got paid well and added photos to my portfolio. The wood fulfilled its purpose. As for Patricia, she served her time and was released from jail last year. I heard through neighborhood gossip that she moved to Arizona to live with family. I hope she found some peace there, though I doubt she learned much from the experience. People like that rarely do. The Sunset Meadows subdivision is quieter now, more functional. The new HOA board focuses on actual community needs like street maintenance and neighborhood safety, rather than petty enforcement of arbitrary rules. Violation notices are rare and proportionate. People actually wave and smile when they pass each other. It's not perfect. HOAs never are. The fundamental problem remains that you're giving a small group of people power over your property with limited accountability. But at least now there are checks and balances, oversight and audits. I still pay my quarterly dues. I still follow the reasonable rules. But I also know my rights now, and I'm not afraid to defend them. My workshop is full again, stacked with beautiful hardwoods waiting to be transformed into tables and chairs and cabinets. Sometimes neighbors stop by to watch me work, and I don't mind. I've even helped a few people with small projects, giving advice or lending tools. But it's on my terms, offered freely rather than demanded or expected. That makes all the difference. The legal documents from the case sit in a file box in my office closet. Sometimes I pull them out and read through them, reminding myself that it really happened, that I really went through all of that over something so fundamentally stupid. The summons, the discovery documents, the trial transcripts, the judgment, the restitution orders. They're all there, a paper trail of institutional insanity. But next to that box is another one, filled with thank you notes from clients, photos of completed projects, and positive reviews. That box is bigger and fuller. That box represents what actually matters. I'm sitting in my garage right now as I mentally catalog all of this, a piece of figured maple clamped to my workbench, afternoon light streaming through the open door. My truck is parked in the driveway at whatever angle is convenient. My doormat is blue. My porch light is as bright as I want it to be, and my wood, all of it, every single board belongs to me. That's how the story ends. Not with some grand revelation or dramatic confrontation, but with simple, hard-won normalcy. I own a house in a neighborhood governed by an HOA. I follow reasonable rules. I do my work. I live my life. And nobody, not Patricia, not any future board president, not anyone, can take that away from me again. The lawsuit that seemed like it would destroy me became instead a strange kind of education. I know more about property law now than I ever wanted to. I understand the court system. I recognize the warning signs of institutional corruption. I'm better equipped to defend myself and others. Several homeowners have contacted me since the trial ended, people from other neighborhoods dealing with similar issues. I've shared my story and Sandra's contact information. In a few cases, just the threat of serious legal resistance was enough to make abusive board members back down. Patricia's conviction made news in local HOA circles. People know now that there can be consequences for abuse of power. That feels like something positive emerging from the chaos. My business is thriving. Last year was my best year ever for revenue. I'm booked out 6 months in advance, and I've had to turn down projects because I simply don't have time. The publicity from the trial, ironically, brought me new clients who appreciated the story of someone standing up to bureaucratic bullying. I'm thinking about expanding, maybe renting a proper workshop space outside the neighborhood. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Because my business has grown beyond what my garage can accommodate. It would be nice to have more room, better ventilation, maybe space to take on another apprentice. But I'll always keep some wood at home in my garage where it belongs. As a reminder. As a principle. The neighborhood kids sometimes bike past my open garage and stop to watch me work. I show them how to use hand planes and chisels, teach them about different wood species and joinery techniques. One kid, maybe 12 years old, comes by almost every Saturday morning now. His name is Tyler, and he's genuinely interested in learning the craft. "Why did that lady sue you?" he asked once, direct in the way kids are. "Because she wanted something that wasn't hers and got mad when I said no." "That's dumb." "Yeah, it really was." "Did you win?" "Eventually." "Good." Simple as that. A kid understood instantly what Patricia apparently never could. Some things belong to you, and you have the right to keep them. The sun is setting now, painting my garage in orange and gold light. I run my hand across the maple one more time, feeling for imperfections, planning the cuts I'll make tomorrow. This piece will become part of a coffee table, paired with white oak legs and a hand-rubbed oil finish. Someone will put it in their living room, set books and coffee cups on it, live with it for years or decades. They'll never know the story of the wood in my garage, the lawsuit, the trial, the whole ridiculous saga. To them, it will just be a nice table, and that's fine. That's perfect, actually. Because in the end, the wood gets to be what it was always meant to be. Not a weapon or a symbol or a point of contention, but simply material for creation, for building something useful and beautiful. That's all I ever wanted. To do my work, live in my house and be left alone. It shouldn't have been complicated. It shouldn't have required lawyers and judges and 18 months of hell. But it did. And I survived it. And I'm stronger for it, even if I wish I hadn't needed to be. The garage door will stay open tonight. The wood will sit right where it is. And tomorrow, I'll make something worth making because that's what I do. That's who I am. Quinton Vance, furniture maker, homeowner, and the guy who got sued over firewood and won. It's a strange legacy, but it's mine.